Hello, this is Bob Mason, and welcome to part 3 of the Amazon Web Services use of Elastic MapReduce in order to run our programs. In this case, we're going to do a fairly simple example of how to run a pig program. Keep in mind that the lab will walk you through more explicit details and provide more information about the process. So here I am going to sign into my console again. And I'm here at my Amazon Web Services list. The icon that I want to pick this time, is the EMR, or Elastic MapReduce Manage To Do framework. So in order to run our programs, what we do is we create a cluster. And you can see I already have one cluster that I've used today. And now we're going to create another cluster. Now keep in mind, I'm just going to bounce back real quick to services. I'm going to click on our storage, and this is just a refresher that you should have created these directories. You need an input, a logs directory, output directory, and then of course your scripts. And we'll take a quick look at this. Here's my pig program script. Here's my parameters that I'm going to use. And I like to keep a copy of the parameters, and these parameters will be available for you to upload to keep in this folder. And a handy thing to do is to take these and to paste them into a notebook session like I did already, but I'll do that again. And then I can keep these handy on my desktop in order to paste in when I go to do the function of running the program. So I'm going to close that. So I have my pig program, I have my parameters. I have a logs file, like I said, and I have my output folder. I must specify my output. And of course, I have to have my input folder. And my input, in this case, is my input text, but I could call it pretty much anything I want. And I'm going to open that, and this is my input text. And what we're going to do for this program, this pig program, simply goes through and parses out each word and does a count on the number of occurrences of that particular word. So I'm going to click on Services again, now that I've made sure that my data files are still there and ready to go. And oops. And what I want to do is I want to click on Elastic MapReduce, which is EMR. Okay, so we were here a minute ago, and now we're going to create a new cluster. And think of a cluster as basically creating the environment, or reserving the environment in the cloud to run your program. So I'm going to click on Create Cluster. And a lot of this, we're going to keep the defaults the same for what we're trying to accomplish. I'm going to call it Bob Cluster. I could leave it as my cluster. That's fine. And I'm going to scroll down through here. Here's the logs folder, and it already defaulted to a new logs folder, so I might as well just leave that. And I can use that again. I could put my logs folder in here if I wanted to. But in this case, I guess I'll just go with the default, and we'll use that log folder. So I just want to make a note of that as I'm going through. As I scroll down, notice it says applications to be installed. Well, this time we're only going to be using Pig. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the X and remove Hive and remove Hue. It takes time to install different applications, and if I'm just using the one, then it makes a lot more sense for this to run faster if I just pick the one that I'm going to use. I can leave the AMI version the same. And I'm going to keep scrolling down. Now here are my options for my instance type. And what I want to do is use as small as one as possible. Notice that it's got extra large, memory optimized, etc., etc. I'm going to use general purpose, but I'm going to try to find the smallest one that I can. And I'm going to use an M1 medium. I'm going to remove this extra one here by clicking on the X. And I'm going to do the same thing. So now we're saying we just want to allocate medium-sized servers and not extra large servers for what we're doing, because this is a really simple program and I don't really need that much horsepower for what we're going to be doing. So, and also it's cheaper. I mean, it's pay as you go, so you want to make sure that you use smaller amounts of hardware when you're setting up your environment to run this program, when setting up to run the programs. Okay, I'm going to continue to go to defaults, and I'm going to scroll down to here. I could add in extra code to do additional actions, but in this case I'm just going to leave it like it is, the default. Now this is where I'm going to add a step. Now the other thing, notice it says auto terminate. I'm going to click on yes, because I want to make sure that if I have a failure, or when my program completes, that it auto terminates. So notice it says auto terminate cluster after the last step is completed. If I click no, it keep the cluster running, and that's not what I want to do. I want to have it shut down as soon as I'm done running my program. So I'm going to add a step. And notice I have a lot of different steps, streaming program that I could use for Python, a Hive program, which we'll use eventually in our lab, and in this case we're going to select the Pig program. Now I'm going to click Create Cluster. Oh, and what I didn't do was I didn't add any steps, or at least a step to run my Pig program. So I'm going to add a step. I'm going to click the Pig program, and I'm going to go over here to my parameters. Now, prior to creating the cluster, I could have done this ahead of time. In this case, I clicked cluster, but I can still add my step in. So it's saying, where's the location of the Pig program? And I'm going to plug in here my RTM scripts. The next thing it's asking for is, where is the input file location? So I'm going to grab from up here my RTM input file. And that's going to it's asking me to put in an output file. Now, if I just put in the output directory, then I'm going to get an error. So I'm going to change this, and I'm going to say, actually create a folder called Pig Program 1. actually create that folder for me. I don't have additional arguments. And what I want to do if this pig program fails for whatever reason, I'm going to terminate the cluster. And I'm going to click on Add. So basically I've set up where the pig program resides in my storage, the input file location that it's going to use to process, and I specified an output location for the results. So everything looks good. I'm going to click on Add. Now notice I'm looking at my job status, and everything's pending. And these jobs, they're batch jobs. It takes a while for everything to get started. So I wasn't in a huge rush to add the pig step. But notice here's my steps that were added automatically for me because I said that I wanted to use pig to run the program. So I have my setup Hadoop step, debugging, followed by it's going to set up the pig environment, and now I have my pig program that's going to be run. I can go up here to hardware and notice that I have 2 medium-sized machines that are going to be allocated to me in order to run this. I have a core and a master. And this is just more information I can get and drill down about the hardware that I'm running. So I have my hardware. I also can look at monitoring. I can look at my node status. So there's a lot of things that we're not really using, but in this case, I mean, we're using the hardware, but there's not a lot of things that we need to watch about, but there are a lot of options, I guess I'm pointing out in this environment, that you can use to watch. Now, notice it's saying it's still starting, so it hasn't gotten around to allocating the machines yet and installing Hadoop on the machines. Notice these are all pending still. Sometimes it can take, 5 to 10 minutes for the process to start. If I change my mind and I say, oops, I made a mistake, I really don't want to run this, I can always click on Terminate, and then this will terminate the cluster, which includes terminating, during any of these steps. And then we have an option for cloning, but we're not going to clone at this time. So I can go back, I can see if I just clicked on the cluster list and it took me back. This is my old cluster that had terminated. And this is my new cluster. I can click on Bob cluster and it takes me back to the prior screen. Since we have a minute before this gets started, I'm going to go ahead and show you, we'll take a look at the prior cluster and a little bit of debugging. This terminated, and notice that it terminated on the Bob pig program. Notice it failed, and I'm going to take a look and see what may have caused it to fail. I'm going to look at the standard output. Oh, the standard output looks like it started the process of these little brackets that are put in here. Notice that it started to do the mapping phase, and it wrapped, during one of the first steps of the mapping phase is it wraps the text in parens. So that doesn't look that unusual, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. I might want to look at my standard error and see what's going on with that. Now, notice behind the scenes, there's a lot going on here. A lot of different steps, and I'm going to scroll down. Oh, it looks like it read 722 records. Well, that was good, and it stored them. So that would have been the individual lines from the file it was processing. And we're working our way through. Some of the steps were successful. Notice the pig version and the Hadoop version that it was running. So then here we've got total records written, 62,000. Total bytes written, 70,000. So we'll keep scrolling through this and see what's going on. It's getting into the MapReduce launcher stage. And notice it's giving me my percentages as it's progressing through that. And remember with pig, it does the mapping and the reducing in one function. So it'll call both the mapper and the reducer. So I'm continuing to scroll through here. Notice for my input, it read 7,222 records. For the outputs, it stored 8197 records into a temp file. The reducer layer, map reducer layer, looks like that was successful. So then we're kind of puzzled. Well, what happened? Why did this fail? We'll keep looking. We're seeing kind of more of the same information written over again. Oh, and then I see an error at the bottom. Now, of course, I could have just searched for the error, but it was interesting to take a little look around into this file. And notice I have an error 6000 that says, output location validation failed. And I was saying I wanted it to write to the RTM output. And it says RTM output already exists. So what it wants is, and what it wanted me to do was to give it another output directory name that it could create. And in this case, I just gave it the name of my output directory that already existed. So notice that we ran this new job. I corrected that and gave a new name for an output directory. So we're going to go back to our job, and we'll go back to the cluster list, and we'll see if anything's happening with our cluster. And we're still waiting for that to start. Let's see if anything happened with the with our steps. Oh, look, it's actually completed our setup pig, and it completed our setting up of the Hadoop, and the pig program's actually running. And it looks like it's been running for 2 minutes. So we're going to let that keep running because it should go pretty fast. Now keep in mind, if you're running this locally on your PC, you wouldn't have had all this setup time. And since it's just such a tiny pig program, MapReduce program, that it would have run really quickly locally. But in this case, it had to do a lot of work in order to set up the environment in AWS as far as allocating machines, setting up Hadoop, setting up the pig language to run, and then actually running the pig program, and then writing to the logs. We saw the logs are quite extensive. Let's see if we can see anything in the logs at this point. No, I haven't created the logs yet, but our program's still running. If you're impatient like me and you want to be doing something, you can always click on cluster list and then check the status and then go back and look at the cluster again. It doesn't make it run any faster, but it's a good thing to do while you're sitting here. Let's see if there's anything else we can look at. We'll look at monitoring again. So this is showing the apps completed, container allocated, apps killed. Doesn't really tell me too much. Let's look at our hardware again. If I glance down here, my program's still running, so this timing is taking quite a while to run. Let's expand this and we'll take a little look. So this is kind of interesting. Notice it has US West 2. So it looks like the cloud storage that Amazon is renting is part of the US West cluster. So Amazon must have an agreement with US West to rent some of their hardware on the cloud to be able to run jobs like this. And I've seen this before. You can click on View Instant Details. It's maybe way more than we want to see. But here we go. We're seeing that it's running. Here's the instance name, medium-sized, availability zone, US West, status checks. Wow, okay, so information about the instance that we created in order to be able to run our program. I'm going to go ahead and shut that down, go back a little bit. I may have gone too far back. Let's see. Let's go down and see if our program completed. Still says running. That's surprising. But we'll go back here and go out to the cluster list. It says it's running. I'm going to compress some of this. Oh, finally. Okay, so I guess by going out and coming back in, it refreshed. It says that my pig job completed. So now we should go over and we'll take a look at our storage, and we can take a look at the logs. And we'll also take a look at our output. So I'm going to click on Services. I'm going to go to S3, which is our storage area. I'll look at our log file that they created, log directory that they created for us. And I'm not sure which was the one that ran the latest, so I'm going to go with this J-3, assuming that's incrementing it. We can look at our steps. Here's our 3 steps. I'll look at the last step, which would be the pig step. At least I'm hoping. Standard out. Yeah, that's not telling me very much. Standard error. I want to open that. So it was doing a variety of different things. Look at it was even logging in as Hadoop and using an SU command. We looked at standard out already. Not sure if we looked at the standard log. Okay, so nothing really there that's that interesting for us. Let's look here quickly and see if there's anything we want to look at. Oh, okay, so here's a lot. Looks like all the steps completed, exit code of 0. And even though we were waiting a long time, it looks like it only took 11 seconds to actually run our pig programming step. And I guess if you had a lot more complicated jobs and you needed to go through and see the errors and see what had happened, then we'll go back to here. Okay, so now we're going to go and see what our data looks like. So we'll go back to all buckets. And here was the folder name I specified. So we have 2 things. We have the output file. We'll look at success first. And it looks like it downloaded that for me. And I'm just going to open that up using Notepad. And that didn't seem to work so well, so I'm going to try to open that up again. Oh, 0 bytes. That's why I'm not seeing anything. Okay. So then let's look at our other output file. That's 81.4. Okay, and it downloaded that for me. I'm going to say open. And I'm going to open up with a local text editor that I use, if I can find it here. Otherwise, I'll just open it up with Notepad. Yeah, I'm not seeing my local text editor in my list. So we'll just see if we open it up with Notepad and see what that looks like. And here's the data. Unfortunately, though, it hasn't broken it off into different lines, but that I can see that the word butterfly net occurred 1 time. The word characteristic occurs 1 time in the file. And that was the goal of this, really, was to go through and to count the words and their occurrences. So I can see that electronically occurred 2 times. Looks like the word identification occurred 3 times. Now let's see if maybe if we open this up in WordPad, this will look a little better for us. So let's try that. Actually, it downloaded it here, so I'm going to open and see if I can open it up using WordPad and see if that displays a little bit better for me. There we go. So that's much easier to read. So of course these are just some partial symbols. I counted those too. And we can decide what things we don't want to be included. So we could just have we can exclude a lot of things that we may not want to see, like numbers or just single letters and things like that. We could make our program a little bit more sophisticated. So in this case, in the text file, the word only showed up 8 times. The word true showed up 11 times. And so here's my word count. Let's see if there's any big word counts. Oh. The word Holmes, as in Sherlock Holmes, showed up 129 times. And we'll keep looking and see if we see any other large word counts that showed up. Without showed up 41. Without a doubt, no doubt. No, where was that 54? There we go. Gutenberg, trademark. And so there you have it. Like I said, the pig program didn't do too much. It was just a simple MapReduce where we wanted to count, parse the file into separate words and then do a word count. Of course, we already looked at our scripts. We won't have anything in our logs because I didn't change the log file when we created the cluster, as you recall. So our logs are all within here in the default folder we created. And you can just see there's a wealth of information. Actually, we'll look in the system log. Yeah, we can see about the different tasks that were done. So anyway, the only thing I want to check before I log out of here is I'm going to go to services. I want to go back to Elastic MapReduce EMR. And what I should see is that that my status is terminated. I don't want to leave something accidentally running and run up a large charge. It's interesting though, notice the elapsed time was 14 minutes, but the actual time, as we saw when we looked at the files, was probably 11 seconds. So there's a lot of setup time in this environment, as I mentioned, and but this is good news. At least this particular job, because we gave it the correct output directory name for it to create, it terminated and it said all steps are completed. So that's what we hope to see. So anyway, that concludes this portion. Like I said, your lab will have a lot more details about running the steps, and then ask you to look at things during the process and also explain things in a little more details. But that's the basic overview of what you're going to be doing for this lab, and we'll be doing that for Hive. So that concludes this demo.